Have you ever wondered what's really going through your avoidant ex's mind during no contact? You cut off communication, hoping they'll miss you, but instead you're met with silence, complete radio silence. And while you're sitting there overthinking every possibility, something fascinating is happening on their end. The longer you stay silent, the more their psychology begins to shift in ways you might not expect. In today's video, I'm going to reveal exactly what happens in an avoidant ex's mind as the days, weeks, and even months of silence go by. Some of these stages might surprise you, others might give you clarity, but by the end, you'll understand the invisible battle happening behind their walls. So if you're currently in no contact with an avoidant ex or you're thinking about implementing it, this video is for you. Let's dive in. Let's start with something that might sting a little, but you need to hear it. When you first go silent, your avoidant ex doesn't panic. They don't immediately realize what they've lost. Instead, they feel relieved. I know that's not what you want to hear, but understanding this is crucial. Avoidants are wired differently. While you might be anxious and overthinking, they're experiencing what feels like a weight being lifted off their shoulders. All that pressure they felt during the relationship, gone. The expectations, the emotional demands, fear of being engulfed vanished. During this phase, they're not missing you yet. They're enjoying their newfound freedom. They're hanging out with friends, focusing on hobbies, maybe even convincing themselves they're better off alone. This is their comfort zone, and they've just returned to it. Think about it from their perspective. Throughout the relationship, they likely felt a constant undercurrent of anxiety about losing themselves, about being too close, about disappointing you. Every text message felt like a demand. Every plan felt like an obligation. Every emotional conversation felt like quicksand pulling them under. Now that you're silent, all of that pressure has evaporated. They can breathe again. They can exist without the constant fear of not being enough or being too much. This relief is intoxicating for them. They might even tell their friends that breaking up was the right decision. They feel lighter, freer, more like themselves. They're convinced that this feeling will last forever, that they've finally escaped the trap of intimacy. But here's what you need to understand. This phase is temporary. It's not the full story. It's just the beginning of a much longer psychological journey. The relief they feel is surface level, defensive reaction to the anxiety they experienced. It's not genuine peace. It's just the calm before the emotional storm that will eventually come as week 2, 3, or even 4 rolls around. Your avoidant ex enters what I call the distraction defense phase. This is where they actively avoid processing their emotions about the breakup by staying busy. They'll throw themselves into work projects, hit the gym harder than ever, binge watch entire series, or suddenly become obsessed with a new hobby. Some might even start dating again, not because they've moved on, but because it's easier than sitting with their feelings. On the surface, it looks like they're thriving. Their social media might show them living their best life. But beneath all that activity is a subtle avoidance of the one thing they don't want to face, the reality of your absence. You see, avoidants are masters at running from their emotions. They've spent their entire lives perfecting this skill. When feelings get too intense, they shift their focus elsewhere. When vulnerability knocks on the door, they pretend they're not home. This isn't malicious or calculated. It's a deeply ingrained coping mechanism that developed in their childhood. So when you go silent, they instinctively fill the void with anything and everything except emotional processing. They might take on extra projects at work, volunteering for assignments they would normally decline. They might start training for a marathon, convincing themselves that physical exhaustion will drown out the emotional whispers. They might reorganize their entire apartment, redecorate, or even consider moving to a new place. The longer the silence continues, the harder they have to work to maintain these distractions. And here's the critical part: distractions are exhausting. They're not sustainable. Eventually, the mind demands to process what's being avoided. No matter how many Netflix shows they watch or how many hours they spend at the gym, there are still those quiet moments late at night, early in the morning, during a long drive when the distractions fade and the thoughts creep in. This is when the first seeds of doubt begin to plant themselves in their subconscious. This is where things start to shift, usually around the 1 to 2 month mark. Something interesting happens. The silence that once felt liberating now starts to feel strange. They begin to wonder what you're doing. Are you thinking about them? Have you moved on? Are you dating someone new? These questions start as tiny whispers in the back of their mind, but the longer you stay silent, the louder they become. Avoidants are curious creatures, even if they won't admit it. They might check your social media, even if they said they wouldn't. They might ask mutual friends about you, casually, of course, as if they're just making conversation. This curiosity is significant because it's the first crack in their emotional wall. They're starting to notice your absence in ways they didn't before. That coffee shop you used to go to together, they thought about you. That song that comes on the radio, it reminded them of you. The silence is no longer just silence. It's becoming a presence in their life. What's fascinating about this stage is that it happens without them consciously deciding to think about you. Your absence has created a void that their subconscious is trying to fill. They might find themselves accidentally typing your name into their phone or driving past places you used to frequent together or ordering the meal you always recommended. These aren't grand romantic gestures or dramatic realizations, yet they're subtle, almost unconscious acknowledgments that you existed in their world in more ways than they initially wanted to admit. Curiosity phase is particularly powerful because it bypasses their logical defenses. They can tell themselves 100 times that the breakup was right, that they're better off alone, but curiosity doesn't listen to logic. It persists, it nags, it grows, and your continued silence feeds it exponentially. Every day without contact is another day of unanswered questions. Every week that passes is another week of wondering. The mystery of your life without them becomes increasingly compelling. Now we're entering deeper territory. As months pass and you continue maintaining your silence, something profound happens in the avoidance psychological landscape, the emotional thaw, all those feelings they pushed down during the relationship, all the love they couldn't fully express, all the moments they took for granted, they start bubbling up to the surface. Without you there to trigger their avoidant defense mechanisms, they can actually feel their feelings without the pressure. This is the paradox of the avoidant attachment style. They need distance to feel safe enough to process closeness. The longer you're gone, the safer it becomes to remember the good times, to acknowledge what you meant to them, to miss you without the fear of being consumed. They might find themselves reminiscing about inside jokes, the way you laughed, small gestures you made that they never acknowledged. The rose colored glasses start to form, but this time they're not running away from these feelings. They're sitting with them. This emotional thaw is perhaps the most transformative stage of the entire process because it represents genuine emotional growth. During the relationship, they were so caught up in their fear of engulfment, so focused on maintaining their independence, so terrified of vulnerability that they couldn't actually appreciate what they had. Every sweet moment was immediately followed by anxiety. Every declaration of love triggered their flight response. Every step closer felt like a threat to their autonomy. But now, with the safety of distance, those defensive walls start to lower. They can look back on memories without the accompanying panic. They can acknowledge that your morning coffee routine was actually really nice. They can admit that the way you supported them during a difficult work situation meant something. They can recognize that your patience with their emotional unavailability was a gift they didn't deserve. The emotions that surface during this phase aren't just nostalgia or selective memory, they're genuine feelings that were always there, but were buried under layers of fear and self protection. This is when an avoidant might cry for the first time since the breakup, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization of what connection actually felt like. This phase is torturous for both of you, though you might not even know it's happening. Your avoidant ex is now in what I call the phantom reach stage. They write texts they never send. They draft emails that sit in their drafts folder. They hover over your contact name, but close their phone before calling. The urge to reach out is real now, but their fear is still stronger. They're fighting an internal battle. The part of them that misses you versus the part that's terrified of vulnerability, the part that wants to reconnect versus the part that's convinced it won't work. Every day of continued silence makes this battle more intense. They're no longer indifferent. They're conflicted in conflict, unlike avoidance eventually demands resolution. Some avoidants can stay in this stage for months, paralyzed by their own fears and desires. Others might finally break and reach out. But the key is this: your silence has brought them to a point where they're actually considering you in ways they never did when you were available. During this stage, they might compose the same message 20 different times, each version trying to strike the perfect balance between casual and caring, between interested and not too invested. They overthink every word, imagining every possible response you might give. What if you've moved on? What if you're angry? What if you don't respond at all? What if you do respond, but you're cold? The fear of rejection, which they've spent their whole life avoiding, now feels more real than ever. This is deeply ironic because when you were together, you were the one afraid of rejection, constantly seeking reassurance while they maintained emotional distance. Now, the tables have turned. Your silence has created a dynamic where they're the uncertain one, the vulnerable one, the one desperately wanting confirmation that they still matter to you, but their pride and their deeply ingrained fear patterns keep them from actually pressing send. They'll convince themselves that reaching out would be weak, that it would open them up to pain, that the timing isn't right, that they need to wait a little longer. This internal negotiation can go on indefinitely, creating a cycle of approach and retreat that happens entirely in their own mind. If the silence continues long enough, many avoidants eventually reach what I call the realization point. This doesn't happen for everyone, and it doesn't happen on your timeline, but when it does, it's transformative. This is when they truly understand what they had and what they lost. It's not just nostalgia or loneliness talking anymore. It's genuine recognition that you were valuable, that the relationship mattered, that their avoidance cost them something real. They might not reach out even at this point, Some avoidants carry this realization silently, convinced they don't deserve another chance or that too much time has passed. Others might finally make a move, but it will be thoughtful, not impulsive. Here's what you need to understand. Reaching this point doesn't guarantee they'll come back, and it doesn't mean you should take them back. If they do, what it means is that your silence has done its job, created space for them to grow, to feel, and to realize whether that leads to reconciliation or closure. You've given both of you the gift of clarity. And sometimes that's the most valuable thing silence can offer. The realization point is characterized by a shift from "I miss having someone" to "I miss specifically having you." The difference between generic loneliness and specific loss, they stop comparing you to idealized versions of what a partner should be and start appreciating who you actually were, flaws, quirks, and all. They recognize patterns in their own behavior, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time how their avoidance pushed away someone who genuinely cared. This self awareness is painful but necessary. Some avoidants at this stage will seek therapy, finally acknowledging that their attachment style is something they need to work on. Others will journal, meditate, or have deep conversations with trusted friends about their patterns. The key element is accountability. They're no longer blaming external circumstances or you for the relationship's end. They're looking inward and accepting their role in the dissolution. This doesn't always lead to reconciliation. And honestly, that's okay. Sometimes the realization point is simply the closure both people needed, even if it comes months after the actual breakup. So there you have it, the 6 stages that unfold in an avoidant ex's mind the longer you stay silent. Remember, these stages don't happen overnight, and not every avoidant will experience all of them. But understanding this process can give you peace of mind during your no contact period. The silence isn't just affecting you, it's creating a profound shift in them too. If this video helped you understand your situation better, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment below sharing which stage you think your ex might be in right now. And remember, whether they come back or not, you're growing through this process too. I'll see you in the next video.